And tonight, temperatures are starting to come down. It has been a scorcher for so many parts of the country. More than 30 million people are under heat alerts today, like in Las Vegas, where the high was 112 today. Phoenix hit 115 degrees. And you see all that red in Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. That means those places are at high risk of wildfires. And with the 4th happening tomorrow, the big question right now is how much hotter is it about to get? NBC's Dana Griffin joins us now from literally the nicest place we could think to send her on this hot one before the holidays, Santa Monica Pier. Hey there, Dana. How's the heat today?
Hey, yeah, don't feel bad for us because I just checked. It's 69 degrees right now. It's almost a little too cold, but, you know, that's why you have thousands of people flocking to the coast because they are really trying to beat the heat, taking these cooler temperatures because in parts of the West from Washington to Arizona, it's been really hot out there, but it has been absolutely nice. I mean, the marine layer has stuck around, so we haven't really seen much sunshine, but, I mean, just taking in the sights, the fresh breeze, you really can't complain, Gadi.
I know. I bet you have rollerblades on underneath all of that. Here in L.A., things have been pretty quiet so far. Yeah, we're just going to skate off right after this. I got to say, though, driving out there, you go down the 405 from here in Studio City where you usually are, and then you start passing those hills. Those hills have been green for quite some time. They're starting to look brown all across California. What was this verdant green is now getting to be dry, and then you've got fireworks. Is there a concern about fireworks and the possibility of wildfires here in Los Angeles or in Southern California for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, Gadi, you bet. And this year is even more concerning because, you know, we had that extreme wet weather during the first half of the year. And so for people who don't know, that created a lot of fuel, which is essentially a lot of plant growth. And now that it's been hot, it's been dry, as you mentioned, it's turning brown. And the concern is that if we were to have a major wildfire roll through here, that is going to be fuel, which is going to help those fires burn hotter and quicker. So that is the big concern. So officials are warning people, do not set off those illegal fireworks, or if you're doing what they consider the safe and sane ones, make sure you've got the fire extinguisher or whatever it takes to make sure that you are not the cause of what could be a very serious wildfire season. Gadi?
Such a good reminder. And one other thing, everyone here in L.A. seems to be talking about whether there's going to be as many fireworks this year as last, and it seems like that's a conversation that's happening in a lot of different places around the country as well. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those fireworks shows are still happening. You've got some cities across the West that are actually opting for those drone light shows to try to prevent any mishaps. But actually, just about 4 miles south here in Marina del Rey, there are some residents who are trying to get the city to cancel their 4th of July fireworks, not out of concern for the fires, but out of concern for the marine life. You know, we've been talking about this toxic algae bloom that is infecting the sea lions, the dolphins, and, you know, there's a concern because not only are they're getting sick, but there's a nesting pin in Marina del Rey, which is just yards away from a barge where they plan to shoot off those 4th of July fireworks. And so residents are concerned that it could agitate those animals. Listen.
Pretty devastating, having things like seizures, not being able to swim very well, and even resulting in death.
People are taking selfies with them, and all these. This is not a photo op for Instagram. It's like a real situation with this algae bloom.
And obviously, we've got a lot of people visiting California. And if you're not familiar, here's the warning from officials. Do not approach these sea lions. The ones that have survived are washing ashore. They can actually be aggressive because of this toxic algae bloom. A lot of people think it's cool to take selfies or to get close. That is not the thing you want to do because these animals are sick and can be very, very dangerous. Gadi?
Dana Griffith out there at Santa Monica. Thanks so much, Dana. Hey guys, it's not just the West Coast heat that's causing problems. Millions of people are under severe storm alerts in the plains and out east. Parts of Chicago and New York look like they are practically underwater after intense rain all weekend. You can see cars underwater in some streets that look like they're rivers. And there's a chance it could ruin a lot of 4th of July celebrations in the next 24 hours. Let's bring in NBC News meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Michelle, what's the next few days looking like?
Hey there, Gadi. Great to see you. It's going to look like more of the same. We've been tracking severe storms. We've been been tracking the chance of flash flooding, also that heat dome for many weeks, and we're stuck in this pattern. So even looking at radar, it is lit up tonight, kind of indicating what we can expect tonight and over the next couple of days. So we have severe thunderstorm watches, severe thunderstorm warnings from the west all the way into the middle of the country to the east. The east is going to be the bullseyes for the storms tonight. We could see some more storms too on your 4th of July. Notice this yellow here. This is a severe thunderstorm watch. That is through tonight, 8 o'clock in some spots, 10 o'clock in others. These little orange boxes, that's where we're seeing severe thunderstorm warning. We're looking at winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour in some spots, lots of lightning with these storms, and also really heavy downpours. So where you see those brighter colors, those are the heaviest rain. So it's like a sponge that you kind of squeeze out. All this water comes out, and that creates all the flooding that we were just showing you. Now, as we look towards tonight, the rest of tonight, still 46 million people at risk for severe storms. It gets even more dangerous as the sun sets. So we're looking off to the Intermountain West, Rapid City. You could see some really strong storms. Could even see some winds gusting up to 75 miles per hour. That's over hurricane force winds. Could see some hail as well. A few tornadoes. That threat is on the lower side, but still not zero. So as we're looking towards D.C. to Richmond, where you see the orange, the yellow, that is the likely spot of where we're expecting some of these storms and where we're seeing the storms at this hour. Then we look towards July 4th. Notice as real estate kind of expands. So we're looking at portions of the Rockies into the Central Plains, the Midwest, so Minneapolis to North Platte, Colby. You're in enhanced risk. 14 million at risk tomorrow. Sort of the same scenario. Winds gusting really high, bringing down some trees, some power lines, taking that power out, damaging hail. Also the chance of an isolated tornado. Now tomorrow we're looking at the East Coast once again. We have a cold front that's sort of just draped over the area. That's that climate connection where things don't move out very quickly. So we're going to see it lingering over the same spots and bringing the chance for severe storms. That's the stormy part. Then we have that steamy part. So 33 million people impacted by some sort of heat alert, whether it's a heat advisory, that's in the orange, a heat warning, that's in the hot pink. Into the southwest, we're going to feel like 120 in some spots, especially in Palm Springs, California, where Dana was. She's looking pretty, looking fresh, looking really nice there. It's in the south where we're looking at those really hot temperatures. And then the Pacific Northwest, we're going to start to heat up too over the next couple of days. Same story in portions of the Carolinas. You factor in that humidity off the Atlantic, it's going to feel a little warmer than that. So take a look at some of the numbers I was alluding to. Palm Springs tomorrow, 119 degrees, 114 on Wednesday, 109 on Thursday. So if you're out celebrating tomorrow, you want to be careful. Get indoors if you can in the air conditioning, some shade. I know a lot of us have to work outdoors, hydrate often. Same story in Fresno into the triple digits Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's when it gets super dangerous, kind of impacting the body day after day. Reno, we're into the 90s. Same story in Salt Lake City. Phoenix, you're going to be warm. So we're looking at stormy conditions. We're looking at steamy conditions over the next several days, including your holiday. Gadi?
And speaking of holidays, on the 4th of July, any of this rain going to disrupt a lot of the fireworks that we could see on the East Coast? Yeah, unfortunately, we're looking at some very soggy conditions. Now, when it comes to these type of storms, we're looking at scattered storms. We're looking at pop-up storms. So we're not talking about an all-out washout up and down the East Coast, but we're looking at the threat for these storms. So you sort of have to take that into account. Watch your weather forecast before you head out to see those fireworks. But notice the middle of the country, the Midwest and the Central Plains. This is showing us where we could see some really heavy rain. So that would certainly dampen the fireworks. Minneapolis to Denver, looking good in portions of the south central states, although warm in Dallas, excuse me. Phoenix, 99 degrees tomorrow evening as you're watching those fireworks go off. But we're looking at clear conditions, so that's the good news. The East Coast, we're going to keep that rain in the forecast. We're looking at New York City to Boston, D.C., hoping to push it out before those fireworks start, but we can't guarantee that. We may see a pop-up storm or two, and that's the same story as we look towards the southeast with rain falling, scattered showers in Atlanta, New Orleans, and also Houston. Fingers crossed. Michelle, thanks so much. Have a great 4th of July. Thanks, you too. And now to a big deal here in Southern California. Thousands of hotel workers, from housekeepers to servers to kitchen staff, are now on strike. And this comes in the thick of summer here in L.A., which is hosting a big anime convention on top of the usual 4th of July arrivals. NBC's Steve Patterson is following the latest for us.
Yeah, Gadi, this is a big deal. No two ways about it. We're talking about 15,000 workers across more than 60 hotels in some of the biggest chains west of the Mississippi in one of the biggest travel seasons of the year, meant to, I think, maximize the impact of this. And basically the argument is that workers are saying that these industries are not paying attention to workers' needs, that the cost of living, of course, in LA, in Orange County, in Southern California, in general, has gone up so much. And the profits that these companies are making, they're not trickling down to the workers in an effective manner in which these workers can actually live in the places that they work. Certainly true, I think, in many places in Southern California, especially Los Angeles. That's the core argument. So are they looking for better benefits, better health care, better retirement plans? Yes, that's all part of the deal. But I think up front, the first thing that they want is a better wage. They are looking for a significant bump immediately. These workers make something like $20 to $25 an hour. It doesn't sound that bad, maybe if you're in the Midwest, parts of the East Coast. Here, that is not much if you want to live here as well. They want a $5 bump right away and then sort of $3 raises as installments as the contract progresses. They're demanding that immediately. The company that has come to the table for the hotel chains has said they've tried to meet that and counter that with something that's pretty reasonable. But their argument is that they didn't come to the negotiation table, the union representatives, that there was almost this silence that was met with their counteroffer, and that it seemed like the union was more interested in striking, maximizing the strike during this period instead of finding a viable solution for their workers. The union would argue that they have come and they're demanding something that should be pretty obvious to everybody that works in the industry, and that they're just not doing enough. So that's where we're at. The union has promised that this will last as long as it takes to find a viable solution, and it will disrupt this high-volume week. Gadi?
Steve Patterson, thanks so much. And if you hike a lot, listen to this. Our outdoor adventures might be getting a lot safer. There's this new cell phone feature that's been helping hikers call for help a lot faster than before. It's like this automatic SOS button, and it's actually saved a bunch of people's lives in the last month alone. NBC's Aaron McLaughlin has more.
Juana Reyes never expected her weekend hike through a remote Los Angeles canyon to end like this. A rescue mission made possible thanks to new cell phone technology.
The dirt just gave way. I tried to find my footing, but it wasn't stable. I landed on the ground in a sort of contorted way.
On a trail like this one, Reyes didn't have cell service, but she did have an iPhone 14, which boasts a new feature, Emergency SOS. Found in settings, it allows a user to dial 911 via satellite. Lucky for Reyes, her hiking buddy knew how to use the new feature and successfully called for help.
It was literally the only way that we got communication out for EMS to come and help us.
The third satellite call LA County Search and Rescue says they received this month.
The notification goes immediately to the nearest 911 call center.
Last month, 10 teenage hikers used the tech after getting lost on a Southern California trail. And in Colorado, 2 hikers were rescued after using a similar technology from Garmin. Certain Android phones will soon offer satellite communication, which Rhea says she'll no longer hike without.
And you never expected something like this to happen?
Absolutely not. Never in my wildest dreams.
Aaron McLaughlin, NBC News, Los Angeles.
And up next, something you don't want to think about on vacation. We are talking about watching out for sharks. We have a report from Florida where there have been a few attacks already this year. That is straight ahead, so stay tuned. And later, ever want to go, I don't know, skiing with as few clothes as possible? Because summer skiing is happening here in California, and it is a blast. We're going to take you to the summer slopes coming up later this hour. Hey there, welcome back. And here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. A bus carrying migrants from Brownsville, Texas, arrived in Los Angeles this weekend. There were 41 people on board. 11 of them were kids. The LA's mayor's office says they were surprised when they got here.
To then be put on a bus for, 30 hours, this is the end of that journey. And so we're just trying to make sure that we are as helpful as possible.
And today, a 4.6 magnitude earthquake hit near Anchorage, Alaska. At this point, it doesn't look like anyone's been hurt. Now, that quake happened this morning about 2 miles southwest of Eagle River, which is a suburb of the city. Earthquake trackers say it started over 17 miles below ground. And Hollywood actors have agreed to put off a strike for now. The contract between SAG-AFTRA and the group that represents producers was supposed to expire on Friday, but a last-minute agreement has pushed that deadline to July 12th. If there is no contract by then, the actors union has voted to strike. And Elon Musk announced temporary limits for users. He says he wants to limit data scraping on the site. Verified accounts would see a 6,000 tweet limit a day. Unverified users would see 600, but after public backlash and reported glitches, he tweeted those limits are now 10,000 and 5,000 respectively. And tomorrow is the 4th of July, which means it's time for Nathan's famous international hot dog eating contest. But before these competitors can chow down in front of thousands of people on Coney Island, one thing they've got to do.
Welcome to the official weigh-in ceremony for the Nathan's famous 4th of July hot dog eating contest.
Let the weigh-ins begin. Reigning champion Joey Chestnut is back. He is hungry for his 16th victory. He took last year's title by scarfing down 63 dogs and buns in 10 minutes, and Chestnut still holds the record for the event. He set that back in 2021. That's when he managed to eat 76 dogs and buns. And we are officially into summer now, and that means a lot of people are heading to the beach. But the bad news is they're not alone. Shark encounters are on the rise. And Sam Brock is in Florida, where recent sightings are a good reminder to know the environment around you.
It's important to point out that unprovoked shark attacks are exceedingly rare. One marine biologist we spoke with said it's about the same odds as winning the lottery. And yet, here in Florida, there have been 3 encounters in just the last week. That includes a 12-year-old girl who required 50 stitches and a paddleboarder who was trailed by a hammerhead shark. For all the fun and frolicking at beaches nationwide over the July 4th holiday, many families are still keeping an eye out for unlikely holiday visitors, sharks.
I really like going to the beach, especially with my family, and it's kind of scary the fact that sharks attacks been happening. We kind of stay in a group and we don't go as far.
Despite the highly unlikely shark scenario, there were only 41 unprovoked shark bites in the U.S. all of last year. Florida's been struck by 3 incidents in a little over a week. That includes 12-year-old Magnolia Woodhead visiting from Philadelphia, who ducked a wave in Cocoa Beach, only to find a shark latched onto her leg, requiring 50 stitches.
It hurts like incredibly bad. It was really, really painful. And I just wasn't expecting it. And I was like, because it was so scary.
And a freaky following for Malia Tribble.
Malia, come to the side.
Whose 80-mile paddleboarding trip from the Bahamas to Palm Beach County to raise money for cystic fibrosis was briefly interrupted by a hammerhead shark.
Malia, you look so calm. Was that actually what was going on internally as you're coming toward the boat?
I mean, I think it was instinct. It was fight or flight. In my situation, ignorance is bliss. I didn't really see the size of the shark. I didn't see how close it was at that time.
Marine biologists quick to point out that we're in their home, and more often than not, sharks are just surveying their surroundings.
Does it pose a threat, or is it potential food? So when sharks follow people or come over to check them out, that's merely an animal that's being curious.
Still, not all encounters end harmlessly. Last month, first responders rescued a man who was bitten while spearfishing in Marathon, and another 35-year-old sustained a foot injury fishing off a dock in Summerlin Key. Florida traditionally leading the nation in unprovoked shark bites. Although this video shows a great white scooping up a fisherman's catch off the Jersey Shore weeks ago, proving that the predators can be lurking just about anywhere. Since 2013, the average number of unprovoked shark attacks globally has been 74. In the last couple of years, the figure has been lower than that. But this year, we're on pace to exceed that figure. In Miami, Sam Brock, NBC News.
Thanks, Sam. A new immigration law went into effect this past weekend in Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis signed the bill back in May as an attempt to crack down on employers hiring undocumented workers. But now the law is sparking concerns of a worker shortage in that state. And NBC's Gabe Gutierrez has more.
The new immigration law that took effect July 1st has prompted protests in Florida. We are people too. We are all people. We are not illegal.
The state's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis signed the bill in May, just weeks before he announced his run for president.
It's easier to come to this country illegally than it is legally.
The law bans local governments from issuing ID cards to people who cannot prove citizenship. It requires hospitals that accept Medicaid funds to ask about a patient's citizenship status. It also increases penalties for people who hire or transport undocumented immigrants. And it expands the use of E-Verify, a federal database employers can use to check a worker's immigration status. We recently asked the governor what he would tell desperate immigrants fleeing violence in their home countries.
Governor, wouldn't you do what you could to protect your family?
Once Biden became president, he basically said, come, and so they're coming. And so in that sense, you know, I do have sympathy for the predicament that they found him in, because I think they've been sold a bill of goods. On the other hand, you know, we just have to have a rule of law in this country.
South of Miami, in these agricultural fields, Yvette Cruz with the Farm Workers Association of America says some migrant workers have already left the state.
There would be people who support Governor DeSantis would say that's a good thing.
They would say that. I tell them, okay, let's wait and see who's going to do the work that no one else is doing.
We spoke with Lesby, who says she's undocumented, and asked us not to show her face because she thinks the new law might make it easier for her to be deported.
You're going to stay. ¿Te vas a quedar?
Sí.
¿Por qué? Why?
She tells me she plans to stay for now because this is her home, but that she and other immigrants like her now live in fear. Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News, Homestead, Florida.
All right, and this next story is about something that terrifies a lot of people. Networking, public speaking, or even having to give an elevator pitch. Communication skills can be a huge part of both getting and keeping a job, but those skills aren't always taught in the classroom. So in Georgia, there's a college that's starting to change that. They have this new program using cutting-edge technology to prep students for everyday encounters and big career moments. And NBC's Maya Eaglin takes a look.
What else? Necklace? Writing proper nouns and simple verbs on Post-it notes isn't everyone's idea of a college course. But here at Savannah College of Art and Design,
welcome to SCAD-AMP. This is great.
There's a whole new type of mastery being taught to more than 7,000 students. The art of public speaking, networking, and effective communication.
We offer one-on-one coaching, small group appointments. We do classroom visits, and we have a central suite of 18 one-hour workshops.
Allie Steinweg is the director of SCAD-AMP, a program open to students, staff, and alumni at no additional cost. She says employers are looking for two things:
critical thinking and professional communication, and we specialize in both.
SCAD's approach is innovative, giving students practice with high-pressure situations before they happen in real life, like practicing their elevator pitch on a literal elevator,
Hiring people
sitting in a cramped airplane row,
What are you doing, Savannah?
even using virtual reality to simulate an audience of hundreds.
In the world.
I used to move a lot, and I didn't even realize I did that.
Bhavna just graduated with her master's from SCAD. Jason is a rising junior.
Having done my undergrad and master's degree in India, how communication works is different. How formal communication is expected is different.
You kind of have a little bit of a step up because you know how to present yourself with intention.
While many folks might think these so-called soft skills aren't necessary, a 2023 LinkedIn report found communication, customer service, and teamwork among the top 10 in-demand skills companies look for in candidates.
We listened to our students. They wanted more skills, they wanted more practice, they wanted more confidence around communicating their work verbally and visually.
So let's be audience for this group.
Eric Honeycutt is a communication coach at SCAD-AMP. His background in acting and coaching helps break people out of their shell.
What gap do you think SCAD-AMP is filling?
What we do at SCAD-AMP is come in and help them think about packaging that information or delivering that information in different contexts.
Hot, hastily, run.
We really try to give students an opportunity to get confidence around their ability to tell their story and specific repeatable tools for doing that.
Maya Eaglin, NBC News.
Post-it notes and VR Wild World. Coming up, a tragic end to a weekend block party. The latest on the search for suspects following a mass shooting in Baltimore. But first, you gotta see this. Cedars-Sinai here in Los Angeles is seeing double. There are 10 10 sets of twins in the hospital's neonatal intensive care unit. And while nurses in the unit don't know if there's an official record for the number of twins at one time, it is safe to say this little group of cuties is definitely in the running.
We're used to twins, we're used to multiples, but having that many at one time was quite an accomplishment.
Hey there, welcome back. Let's get you caught up in 30 seconds. Triple-digit heat just won't quit in the southern parts of the United States, but California and parts of the Southwest are getting a brief break from those sky-high temperatures just in time for the 4th. And it's day 2 of a hotel worker strike here in Los Angeles. Thousands of workers walked off the job in the largest strike in the union's history. And high tech came to the rescue for one hiker in Los Angeles. Her iPhone SOS feature signaled for a rescue after she was hurt during a fall. Baltimore police are saying that at least 3 different guns were used in a mass shooting there over the weekend. It happened at a block party and ended up killing 2 people and leaving 20 others hurt. George Solis is in Baltimore with the latest.
The search for shooters or shooters in the Baltimore mass shooting only intensifies. Baltimore City officials saying they recovered multiple weapons and shell casings at the scene. They are now begging and pleading with the community for any information that may lead to arrests. They have now also issued a $28,000 reward for any information. They are putting out this flyer in that community with the photos of the 2 victims, 18-year-old Aaliyah Gonzalez and 20-year-old Kylis Fagbemi. Again, asking anyone with information to come forward. We know at this hour there are still 7 teens in the hospital, 4 of them listed in critical condition, and that is what's very upsetting to a lot of people in this community, that half of the victims wounded at this shooting were just teenagers. The youngest, we're learning, just 13 years old. And again, there's still a lot of stones unturned. Police say they haven't even begun looking through all of the video that is circulating on social media right now. Again, this press conference to alert that at this point they still have no motive or suspects, and they are looking at the potential of multiple shooters. Very alarming. Take a listen, if you can, to what the officials had to say.
We are doing everything in our power to ensure that the horrific violence that occurred this weekend is not repeated either in Brooklyn or any other neighborhood across Baltimore.
Baltimore's mass shooting was the 338 and the second highest victim count this year, according to the National Gun Violence Archive. Again, the numbers just staggering, and the messaging from city officials today is anyone with information that may help lead to an arrest of the shooter or shooters is urged to come forward. Back to you.
George Solis, thanks so much. Now, a big crack in the beam of a roller coaster in North Carolina was caught on camera while that ride was still in progress. NBC's Emily Akeda has more on this story and what you need to know about amusement park safety.
Hey there. Well, luckily, no one was hurt. And now the ride, called Fury 325, is shut down indefinitely, with the State Department of Labor on the ground in North Carolina today to begin an investigation. The closure of the popular ride that sends guests soaring 325 feet into the sky comes as tens of millions of Americans turn to amusement parks for summer fun.
This morning, new questions swirling about safety after this alarming video of a giant crack in a roller coaster support beam, causing it to shift outwards as a car full of thrill seekers round the curve. Jeremy Wagner, who took the video at North Carolina's Carowinds amusement park, was shocked by what he saw.
I'm like, I can see light through it. And I'm not an engineer, but that's not good.
Wagner, whose family had just ridden that coaster, quickly told park security and the fire marshal, and the ride was shut down indefinitely. Carowinds, which is owned by Cedar Fair Entertainment, writing in a statement, "Safety is our top priority, and we appreciate the patience and understanding of our valued guests during this process."
It makes me second guess getting on a roller coaster now.
Fury 325 is one of Carowinds' premier attractions. Its website touts it as the tallest, fastest, longest giga coaster in North America that crosses the North and South Carolina border. This photo, taken by a park visitor just a week earlier, appears to show the cracks starting to form. The coaster has been operating since 2015, and Carowinds says Fury 325 and all of its rides undergo daily inspections.
How did it get to this point? And people are on that ride.
It's putting the spotlight on ride safety, just as amusement parks are starting the summer visitor crush. Last year, Missouri 14-year-old Tyrese Sampson fell out of a drop tower seat and died at Orlando's Icon Park. But despite the harrowing incidents, Jim Shea, president of Premier Rides, says safety measures are rigorous.
The same types of tools that are used in aerospace engineering are used in the theme park industry.
For Jeremy Wagner, he says his family won't be worried to get back on Fury 325 when it's fixed.
I would like to think that their safety protocols and fixing the issue would be secure enough.
Carowinds did not say what might have caused the crack in the beam or how inspection may have missed it, but they did say their rides, including Fury 325, undergo daily inspections. NBC News also reached out to Carowinds about that photo taken in late June, but they did not directly address it. Meantime, Charlotte police say they are confident in Carowinds' commitment to safety. Back to you.
So scary. Amelia, Kata, thanks so much. Now, for some people, forget heading to a barbecue or the beach to celebrate the 4th of July. In a lot of cooler places in California, thousands are choosing to ring in Independence Day on the slopes. NBC's Maggie Vespa has the best assignment of the day.
Happy 4th of July! On the holiday devoted to red, white, and blue, a rare chance to shred the white.
You're skiing on the 4th of July?
Yeah, hell yeah.
How wild is this?
So sick. So sick. Many repping their best stars and stripes.
We're doing our best to not grow up.
Others simply in summer's finest.
I've never skied in the summer, and I've never skied in a bikini.
Against the odds, this 4th of July weekend, the slopes of Northern California's majestic Mammoth Mountain remain primed for an estimated 10,000 patriotic runs. The snowy summer conditions, remnants of a relentless winter, swelling the Golden State's rivers and streams, and at its peak, burying the mountain's chairlifts. Staff had to dig them out.
How intense was that?
Very. There were some that it took us a number of days to get dug out.
Even this lodge was completely submerged.
Some 900 inches of snow piled up here on the summit, shattering previous records and stretching the ski season well into summer.
A silver lining, some say, to a rough winter.
It's great that we can all enjoy it now.
Speaking of enjoying it, woo! We can confirm resistance is futile. Like, this is July. This is wild. Marking an unlikely celebration of America's independence on ice. Happy 4th of July! Maggie Vespa, NBC News, Mammoth Mountain, California.
The definition of Bluebird Day there. Coming up, protests in France over a police shooting have spread to the suburbs. One mayor's home was even attacked with a burning car, which some were saying was an assassination attempt. And Israel has launched a major military operation in the West Bank. We're going to explain why after the break. Hey, thanks for coming back. Let's take a quick look around the world in 80 seconds. In Ukraine today, President Zelensky said that progress is being made along the front lines and that Ukrainian soldiers have reclaimed some 14 miles of territory from Russian forces. Meanwhile, a UN nuclear watchdog says a Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has finally had a backup power line reinstalled, which has, at least for now, eased some fears about a possible meltdown. And the trial of actor Kevin Spacey is underway in London. Today, Spacey's first alleged victim spoke out, saying he was repeatedly groped and grabbed against his will by the actor over the course of 5 years. Spacey faces a number of allegations of sexual assault. He's pleaded not guilty to all charges. We stay in the UK for a quick look at day one of Wimbledon, where at 43 years old, tennis star Venus Williams returned to center court, but she suffered a bad fall, hurting her knee, collapsing and screaming in pain. Williams could not overcome that injury, and she lost the match. Meanwhile, Novak Djokovic, who is competing for his 5th consecutive Wimbledon title, won in straight sets. And the U.S. ambassador to Russia visited detained Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich in jail today. The State Department says he is in good health and remains strong. Gershkovich is facing espionage charges in Russia, where he was arrested back in April. Both Gershkovich and the American government deny those charges. And arrest numbers are down in France after nearly a week of unrest, but tensions there still remain high. And these scenes of cars on fire, burning buildings, and fights with police and protesters are still happening, all triggered by the deadly police shooting of a French teenager of North African descent. Now, some of his relatives are urging people to stay calm. NBC's Matt Bradley has more from Paris.
Yeah, Gadi, well, it really has been an extraordinary week of violence here in France. And this is a country that is really used to street-level political violence. But this has been some of the worst violence that this country has seen in recent memory. Now, we are finally, it seems, seeing that wave of violence starting to ebb. Last night, police reported that they had arrested 157 people. Now, that still sounds like a big number, but it is much, much less than the height of the violence that we saw on Friday night when police said that they had arrested more than 1,300 people. Now, I was talking with some public officials today, and it's unclear exactly why the violence appears to have calmed down, but it's clear that something has changed. It might be that some of the victim's family members, the victim Nael, this 17-year-old boy who was shot dead by police at a traffic checkpoint back on last Tuesday, they came out and pleaded with protesters to stop the destruction. But it also looks as though the French public is turning very much against this protest movement, and that's because of some of the extreme violence that they've been seeing all across the country, particularly outside of major cities like here in Paris. But tonight is going to be the big test. The Ministry of Interior has said that they're going to be deploying once again about 45,000 officers across the country. Now, even though we saw less violence last night, if tonight we still see less violence on the streets, then that could show that this protest movement has finally been placated. Gadi?
Matt Bradley, thanks so much. At least 8 Palestinians were killed and over 24 were hurt after Israeli forces launched airstrikes targeting the occupied West Bank, the most intense attack in nearly 20 years. Now, hundreds of troops were also deployed into the crowded Jenin refugee camp. Meanwhile, countries like Jordan are calling for Israel to stop the raids right away. NBC's Josh Letterman has more.
Israel's government is describing this as an extensive counterterrorism operation, saying they had to go into Jenin, into this refugee camp, which they say has been the source of some 50 Palestinian terror attacks in recent months. And over the last 24 hours or so, we've seen the Israeli government use armed drones, as well as IED detecting trucks and vehicles, as well as helicopters, as they try to pursue what they say is an effort to get rid of that threat that they say is risking the lives of Jewish settlers who live in the West Bank, including 4 Israelis who were shot dead just last week. The Israeli military says that so far they've been able to go after an explosives factory, as well as situation rooms used by Palestinian militant groups that are based in and around Jenin and within the West Bank. But the Palestinians, they are calling this a new war crime. They say it is abhorrent. They are calling for a UN Security Council meeting to address Israel's actions in the West Bank. And they also say that they're cutting off all communication with the Israeli government, including diplomatic conversations, as well as security cooperation with the Israeli government. So you can see this situation already brittle, starting to spiral very quickly. A key question: how long will Israel stay in Jenin, with the Israeli military saying they will be there for hours, potentially days, however long it takes to stop this threat. The State Department, meanwhile, supporting Israel's right to self-defense, including in this most recent raid, but also calling on Israel's government to take pains to minimize the damage to civilians who live in the West Bank.
Josh Letterman, thanks so much. And before we go, it is time for the future of everything. And tonight, we're taking a look at a potential evidence of something that crashed onto Earth and might have come from outside of our solar system. You are not going to want to miss this story, so stay tuned. There's a chance that we were hit by an interstellar alien artifact back in 2014, but it landed in the ocean and no one was around to see it. Also, the definition of alien is still up for debate, and that is where Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb comes into the picture. He's the guy who wrote the book about alien stuff flying in space. Literally, it's called Extraterrestrial, the first sign of intelligent life beyond Earth. And he wrote it after studying that other weird asteroidish thing called Oumuamua that we detected flying through the solar system, saying it might have been an alien probe from a different galaxy. You remember those headlines. Well, after that, he went back and he started looking for records of anything else that might have come from a different galaxy and found that something crashed into the Pacific more than 10 years ago. Then he did a bunch of math that is way beyond my head, and the next thing we knew, he was leading an expedition off the coast of Papua New Guinea on a ship dragging this magnetic sled looking for pieces of what they now call 1M1 on the bottom of the ocean. And guess what? He found something. And now we are starting to see the first close-up images and scans of what researchers think are fragments from that crash site. Now, Professor Loeb is just back from that expedition, and he's now back to work as head of Harvard's Galileo Project, which is looking to answer the biggest question on Earth. Are we alone in the universe? Professor, thank you so very much for joining us. I see you're back in this suit, but we saw you on the deck of that ship. Spoiler alert, before we hype you up too much, I have seen no evidence that you came back with an intact craft. But that's how science is supposed to work, right? What did you find on the seafloor?
Well, it's quite remarkable. There was a fireball back in 2014, and the outer surface of the object obviously melted because the amount of energy released was a few percent of the Hiroshima atomic bomb energy, and you expect any material to melt under these circumstances. And the droplets of melted material fell to the ocean floor, and they laid there for almost a decade, until we went there with a ship that was fittingly called Silver Star. And we used the magnetic sled, basically a sled that is covered with magnets on both sides. We kept it on the ocean floor and went a distance of 10 kilometers for each line of our search. We crisscrossed the region that was defined as the meteor site by the Department of Defense. And amazingly enough, I mean, we had an estimate for what the path of the meteor should have been, and we found small droplets of, basically they look like metallic marbles embedded within the volcanic ash that was everywhere. And we found them primarily along the expected meteor path. So there is clear evidence that they are related to this meteor, and moreover, we have them in our hands. It's the first time that humans hold material belonging to a big object that came from outside the solar system.
A lot of people are going to see this and they're going to say, oh, actually, you know, asteroids and meteors have been hitting Earth for quite some time. What makes this different?
Well, the asteroids and meteors that we have seen before were all bound to the sun gravitationally. So they were orbiting the sun. They were debris of the material that made the planets in the solar system. However, this object was moving faster than the escape speed from the solar system. It was moving at 60 kilometers per second relative to the sun outside the solar system. And that's faster than 95% of all stars in the vicinity of the sun. Moreover, this object maintained its integrity down to the lower atmosphere above the ocean surface, about 20 kilometers there. And that implied that it was made of materials stronger than all the meteors on record, 272 of them in the NASA catalog. So this material was tougher than iron meteorites. And it raises the possibility that because the object was moving fast, perhaps it was assisted by some artificial propulsion, and perhaps it was made of some artificial alloy, the way we make our spacecraft. Because if you imagine Voyager, Pioneer, New Horizons that were launched out of the solar system, in 1 billion years from now, they will not be functional and they could collide with an exoplanet, creating the appearance of a meteor on that planet. And a scientist over there that is curious enough could find the debris, as we did.
Okay, so now everyone's attention is peaked. You said artificial. When you're talking about interstellar, if this thing wasn't being pulled in by the gravity necessarily of the sun and it came from outside of the solar system, what do you think it could be?
Well, the point is, it's not a matter of opinion. We don't need to assume anything. We have the material in our possession. That's the beauty of it.
We don't need to assume anything. We just need to get a sled and put it on the bottom of the seafloor and do science.
Well, it was a very challenging task because the depth of the ocean is 2 kilometers. we had a sled of 1 meter in width, and we went along lines that stretch 10 kilometers in length. And the fact that we were able to find these millimeter scale droplets, metallic marbles, spherules, is remarkable. It's a remarkable achievement. There was a team of exceptional professionals that contributed to that success. I was doubtful that we will find anything, but we took the risk and we found it. And now the next task is to examine the materials. And we have state-of-the-art instruments at Harvard University that we will use to study the material that made this object and look for things that do not resemble what we find in meteors, rocks in the solar system. For example, imagine it was an artificial object and there were semiconductors that were melted. Obviously, we will find trace elements that are not common to rocks. Also, these spherules that are millimeter in size, you can think of them as romantic rose petals that lead us to our partner, so to speak. And the partner that I refer to is any big relic that was left behind and is lying on the ocean floor. We now know the path that the meteor took, and we can plan for the next expedition where we will go after any big relic and using completely different machinery that will image the ocean floor. And if we find it, we could tell easily the difference between a rock and some technological gadget. And we might even, if it's a gadget, we might even see a label made on exoplanet Y, and it might have some buttons on it. So in the last class of my spring semester, I asked the students at Harvard University, I said, if we find a gadget and it has buttons on it, should we press a button? And half of the class said, no way, that's very risky. You don't know what will happen if you press a button. The other half said, that would be amazing. Let's see what happens. Maybe it's GPT 100. And then one of the students asked me what I would do. And I said, well, I will bring it to a laboratory and first examine it before engaging with it.
Well, when you do, please invite us. Also, I can't wait to see when these results come back. Just real quick, what's the timeline, do you think, for when you could see some of those results?
Yeah, so within the coming weeks, it's just a matter of weeks for us to run the spherules through, X-ray fluorescence devices, electron microscopes, all kinds of instruments that allow us to get a peek as to what the spherules are made of and what their structure is. Already what we see from a very preliminary analysis is that each spherule has spheres within spheres, just like Russian dolls. And it's really interesting because it means that tiny spheres on the scale of hundreds of atoms condensed first, they solidified, and then bigger droplets of liquid engulfed them and then solidified. So you end up with spheres within spheres. That's an amazing view, and we just got it from an electron microscope. And we also have some preliminary analysis of the composition, but we want to get a large enough statistical sample of the spherules we have at our possession. We have more than 50 of them, and we will find more in the materials that we collected. But the basic point is, we are following the evidence, and whatever it shows us, we will report to the public in an open way. And one thing we already know is that the spherules that were found along the preferred path of the meteor. They were mostly there. They were not in control regions, in distant locations that are far away from this path. And that shows a link.
Professor, thank you so much for joining us. You set off to find a needle in the biggest haystack I can imagine, and you came back with 50 of them. Can't wait to see those results. Professor Loeb, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And that does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. Have a safe and happy 4th of July. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.